Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your Amac podcast, Better for America. I'm excited today to share with you our guest. She's a pathbreaker, a newsmaker, a popular speaker, and really personifies the American dream. Despite challenges of our time, Alison Maloni is a doer, a person of vision and a person of action, a mother of three, and currently an anchor and contributor for Newsmax TV. She also heads the Allison May public relations firm, which is pioneering public relations, and she is a great example of what happens when we dare to have dreams young and work hard for them. Allison wanted to be a news anchor at a very young age, and she is today. She is also a valuable voice for our time. So I'm thrilled to have you with us, Alison Maloni. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
This is really great. And when I was looking forward to speaking with you really about a range of issues. We really have no deficit of big issues, but let me start with basics. Now, you had a dream when you were young, and that dream was being a news anchor. And in some ways, you really are the personification of the American dream because you made your dream happen. So I do want to ask you, how did you do that? Can you tell us your story? And then as a national presence and a national speaker, when you talk to young Americans, how do you convey to them that they too can have their dreams realized if they work for them and achieve them right here in America?
Yeah. So I wanted to be a news anchor since I was 9. I would come home from school, dress up in my mom's clothes, and I'd take the newspaper and I would write my own news scripts. And I would pretend I had a newscast. I'd sit at my desk. I would do everything from like the news. I would be the meteorologist. And I had become friends with a local news anchor, and she pretty much took me under her wing and was my mentor. And she told me, moving forward through school, what classes to take, what to in, certain things. And I got an internship at her TV station. And it was really neat because I had met her when I was 9, and there all of a sudden, now I'm interning. I'm sitting in the newsroom with her, and as they say, you get your experience. So I kind of traveled throughout the New England area. I was a news reporter. I was a photographer. I was an editor, a producer. I kind of did everything. And I think having a mentor was extremely important. And that's what I tell my daughters. It's what I tell anybody who wants to get into any field, that you should have a mentor from a young age. And whether you keep that mentor or even later on in life to have a mentor. I have another mentor who is my old news director, who actually I just spoke with yesterday because he was checking in on me. And I think that's so important, because having somebody that you can talk to, who can guide you through, who you can be real with, who you can cry to, is so important. But so yeah, I got into news, and then I took a break. I wanted to have a normal life. So I had some children, and I started my own public relations firm about 9 years ago. And I just kind of stumbled back into the news industry. It wasn't something I thought I was going to do. I thought, this is done. That was a time in my career. But I had an opportunity to be a contributor for Newsmax. And then I was able to start a couple of shows with them, and I fell back in love with it. And it was funny because I always wanted this when I was little, but life kind of got in the way. So I didn't really think that I'd be able to pursue it. And here I am doing it, and I absolutely love it. So my advice is always never give up. And even if you take a different path, you never know if you're going to come back to that path. So that's why I try and tell, especially my daughters, because, hopefully they see, me who's been persistent with things, and, life gets in the way, but there's no way that you can't do what you want to do, especially for, when we just had International Women's Day yesterday. And I just think it's a great time for young girls to see, their moms, their grandmothers, their aunts do anything they want to do, which I don't know. I just get super excited about it.
I do think that's beautiful, and I love hearing that story. It seems to me that the things that we love to do are usually the things that we're good at, the things that, God has gifted all people with certain talents, and sometimes it's hard for us to identify what those talents are. But if we recognize what we love to do, that's usually what we're good at. And so I say to young people, pursue what you love doing. Thank you, Alison. I appreciate your feedback. I do want to shift to some issues that seem to be on everyone's mind, and many people are wrestling with these issues. These are really stressful times. And so I want to focus a moment on the cultural issues that we're facing. the kinds of things that average everyday Americans really have to wrestle with. Now, we've all been subject to COVID restrictions, and we have this sense of major government overreach, and we're facing a rising inflation, crime, insecurity, mismanagement of our international affairs, everything from our botched withdrawal from Afghanistan to Ukraine. So I do want to ask you, since you are really an inspirational speaker, where do you get your optimism, your energy, and the sense that we can get through tough times? Because I know that we're all facing them. And many of our members who are over 50 years old, seniors in particular, are feeling times are different. So do you have some thoughts on how to stay optimistic in these really uncertain times?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think too, if you watch the news, or for me, if I'm in it, I feel like all the time, you can get in a really dark place, especially with what's happened. So I try and just take a break from the real world, if you will.
Mm.
And I know, you look back in history and there's always things that during that time we think are the worst. I mean, you go back to 9/11, which was the worst day I think any American, has lived through, as of the last, 20 plus years, but we got through it. So we have inflation, we have a lot of things, and it's a lot of this uncertainty. The one thing I will say that I do feel is different, which I don't like, is this divide that I think our country has gone through over the last few years, whether it's politically divided or racially divided, and we weren't like that. So that's my big thing. And I even see my daughters, talking about that more. So there has to be a way that we can come together as a country and stop being so divided. And the other thing too, it's politics. People can't agree to disagree. If you are a Republican and you have Democrat friends, some Republicans won't be friends with their friends because they think differently. And I think that we've really taken it a step beyond. But to go back to your question, I think we just have to have faith and know that things will get better, and just, be positive. I try every day to write things I'm thankful for, whether it's just I'm thankful that I had a day off, or I'm thankful for a good breakfast, but that gets your mindset going, especially when there's so much negativity, and just take it day by day, because we are so anxious and there's so much going on that you have to sometimes disconnect. I shut my phone off every once in a while because I just don't want the news alerts. I don't want to go on social media. So you have to just take a break and know that things are going to work out.
I love that. That's such great. It's very simple. It's common sense, but boy, do we forget it. And these are really important thoughts, and it's really a great perspective. So thank you, Alison. I do want to return for a moment to media, and really your perception of media today, because you really are in the middle of things, and you are working for a very credible company with really a great record of truth and hard-hitting stories. And our republic, it really depends on informed citizens and on the truth. And so many Americans are struggling to understand where the truth is and where they should be getting their news. People are afraid of news. They're not trusting the news, rightly so. So I do want to ask you, because you've been in the business for some time, the media seems to be in a major transition. And I think much has to do with their credibility and unfortunately coming out with stories that we find out later learn are not true, or a spin of the truth. Now, as a mother of three, how do you think the next generation will be assured that what they hear is in fact the truth? And how do you see media changing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the media has changed significantly, I would say, in the last 10 to 15 years. We went from getting our news during the evening, right? Remember the evening news with Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings, to now all of these shows, which they're opinionated. And I think people get them mixed up between, are these news shows, or are they just commentators? Are they opinionated shows? And if you watch one network, you're going to have one area of news versus a different network, and which is really scary, because some networks are really just voicing their opinions. Before, if you made a mistake, you would have to issue a rebuttal, you'd have to issue a correction. Now it's no big deal. Like, oh, well, we'll say we got those numbers wrong, or, we don't need to air that. And so it's a very different world. I think that more media outlets are going to be held accountable, because people are starting to see that these journalists are not necessarily journalists, that they just have their opinions. I think we're going to start going back to more credible journalism. And at least my daughters too, I tell them, because they'll see something, they're younger, on TikTok, and they'll say, did you see this? And oh my gosh, please don't get your news from TikTok. But I always tell them, I said, you have to Research, right? Don't just go to one news outlet and say, well, this is the truth. You really need to research and see, where is that story coming from? Who are these people saying it? We just have to put our due diligence in it. More people will spend time researching a restaurant than they will researching a news story, whether or not it's accurate.
Right.
So I think we just have to put more work into it. But I do see the news going back to news because there's such a distrust for news outlets. The one thing we do hear from a lot of people who watch us and say thank you because you're being honest and you're putting the truth out there. So that feels good. But there's other news outlets that just they certainly don't report what they should, report the facts.
That's right. Thank you for that. I do want to turn to some other issues that you recently spoke about. And I think that many Americans, we've been talking about worrying about the future and seeing all of these major things that are happening across our country, whether it be COVID or open borders or critical race theory being taught in our schools. There are so many issues that are impacting average everyday American families, but I'm concerned that people have been really dragged down by COVID, negative news, and they sometimes probably feel like they're carrying the world on their shoulders. So there's so much out there, but maybe you could apply your observations in the area of being a mother and a career woman wrestling with COVID, mask mandates, and all of the above. How do we continue to offer hope to our children so that they learn how to think, not what to think, and that they learn how to ask for help without judgment? We want them to learn from their mistakes and really feel a sense of hope as they grow to identify their own God-given talents. Now, we saw what happened in Virginia, how families turned out demanding that they have a major voice in their children's education. Can you offer your perspectives as a mother and a businesswoman, your thoughts on these topics?
Yeah, I think parents and business leaders, we need to do what they did in Virginia. I think, and I saw it happen even in Massachusetts. We need to speak up for things that we believe in, especially when it comes to our kids and what they're being taught in school or being forced to wear a mask. Because if we don't speak up, then nobody else is going to, especially for our kids. And I think if our kids see that we're speaking up and we're not letting down, like if they say, okay, you need to wear masks again, well, you can be sure that us parents are going to be there, writing letters, calling our political figures. We're on it. We can't settle for what they tell us because they don't know what's in the best interest of our kids. So I think that in anything, whether it's your job or work or school, we have to speak our own voice. And that I saw a big change happen even in just my school district in Massachusetts because parents were speaking up. And we saw what happened in Virginia, and I think it's going to happen in other states, especially when it comes to education and COVID. And I think people are tired of the government getting involved with certain things. I think we saw follow the science. Really, what does that mean? So I think that although COVID was challenging and extremely difficult, especially for kids, I think it was a blessing because we got to see what was being taught to our children in school. We got to see exactly what was happening behind the scenes, and we got to change things because we had a voice. So I think at the end of the day, all things positive come of those negative situations. So speak up. That's what I tell my kids because nobody's going to do it for us.
Oh, that is great that you're just reminding us of that, and I agree with you. Seeing sort of the silver lining with COVID, I too was relieved to see that there was so much revealed that these school districts were doing, and these school boards were making decisions without parents really being a part of that decision making. And so I do see it as a blessing as well, and hopefully we've called them out. And I do think that this is going to have a major impact on future elections because people care about the things that impact them at home. And when we turn on parents and tell parents that they don't have a right or a say in their own children's education, it just doesn't feel right. We know that it's wrong, and it's damaging to children, sending them a mixed message. So I really appreciate you sharing us your experiences. That's really great. I do want to turn, there's so much going on, Alison. We could talk about a million things, but this recent Russian invasion of Ukraine has had a tremendous impact on people here at home. And we do see this impact on energy. People are paying more at the pump. And we were paying more at the pump before Russia invaded Ukraine. But we're also feeling global, what's happening across the globe and economies across the globe. So how do you think what's happening abroad is going to impact us at home? Do you see any data that suggests that Americans are focusing on these international issues more and more, on the issues over in China, Iran, Russia, and really how all of these events in Europe will affect us here. And then also, in your opinion, I want to ask you, how do you think these issues, America's energy, lack of energy independence, and this war in Ukraine, how do you think this might affect the 2022 and 2024 elections?
I think that when things happen in other countries, I don't know if Americans tend to pay a lot of attention, but this is different because this is affecting us with gas prices. We've had, as you brought up, I know that some people are spinning it saying that this is the Putin's, gas problem that he created.
Right.
That didn't. We've seen gas prices go up over the last few months. But I think when it's affecting us in the wallets, we've got, and the supply chain crisis, we have inflation, we have gas prices. Now it's all coming together. Why has this all happened? And I think people are understanding, wait a minute, we have to rely on other countries to give us oil and gas when we were doing it here, and we were set to, and our gas was lower, we had jobs. So I think that Americans' eyes are being opened to these foreign things that we really weren't paying attention to before because it wasn't affecting us that much, but now it is. So I think that's a good thing. But I think that what's happening in Ukraine, I think now we have our eyes more on China. We heard China, we should be worried, but people didn't really pay attention. Now I think they are, because they're seeing what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. So I do. And then we also, we just don't know what's going to happen with cyber attacks. Again, it's so many different things are coming out of this that we need to pay attention to what's happening here in our country. What are we spending for defense? Have we cut that? Are we spending? Because we want to spend on everything, right? There's so many things in the Build Back Better plan, but is there money in there for our defense? Are we prepared for cyber attacks? Are we prepared for nuclear war? All these things that I don't think people were thinking about now are on the table. And I absolutely think this is going to affect elections now more than ever, just like we saw that happen in Virginia because the parents came out. I think we're going to see a huge change in 2022 with people saying, okay, I'm paying more, I'm making less. We have all of these things happening. We have crime on the rise. There's an increase in drugs. There's all these things that are now affecting these cities that were safe are not safe anymore. And it's going beyond the big cities. It's going into small towns. And when that happens, that's when people come out and vote because it's directly affecting them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I do see, I think many of us here at Amac do see a red wave coming because we recognize that so many of these issues we've been talking about for months, for years. We've been talking about America's energy independence. We've been talking about what's being taught to our children in school. We've been talking about building a stronger military. When we're able to point all this out, now we, as you put it, we see it all coming together, all of these things that are really impacting families, American families. It is so important that we're paying attention and that we're reminding us that we need to teach our children how to think, not necessarily what to think, but how to think and how to draw on that, on those abilities so that they can become, patriotic Americans who also love our country. I want to thank you so much, Alison. It has been really wonderful to have you here. I think that to many of our AMAC members, we do sense that there's, America's at risk. And we do see that combination of high crime, inflation, weak national leadership, and then we're seeing what's happened in Europe, and we see how all of these things coming together are putting our country at risk. So I want to thank you for doing what you do. It is important that we have your voice. How can those people that are listening follow you, find you, and participate in the discussion that you share?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter. So it's just Alison Maloni with one L. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Where else am I? LinkedIn. I'm on, I think, Getter. There's so many new platforms out there. I can't even keep up with them. But mainly,
I get it.
I spend a lot of time on Twitter and Instagram. I try and post kind of behind the scenes things, but it's more just friends and family and positivity. I try not to be doom and gloom there, but Twitter is more news oriented, and then Facebook as well. So yeah. I'm everywhere.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us the proper spelling of your last name, Alison Maloni. One L in Allison as well.
Yes, it is.
Is that right?
Yes, it is. I always would get mad at my parents because I can never find my name spelled correctly on the pens and pencils back then.
Yeah.
I didn't order online, but it's okay. I like it. It's unique. I've learned to love it.
That's wonderful. I never knew that my name was Rebecca until I was in fifth grade because everyone called me Becky when I was growing up until the teacher called me out Rebecca. So I learned how to spell it in kindergarten, rather. Thank you so much, Alison. Your observations are really such a good example and timely and really valuable and helpful. So I want to thank you for everything you do and for being a living example of the American dream. We want to encourage people here at AMAC. We want to remind people of all ages, young and old, that it's never too late to pursue your American dream, and you're a marvelous example of that. So thank you for sharing time with us and our listeners.
Of course. Thank you.
And I also want to thank everyone out there listening. Thanks for tuning in today. If you haven't downloaded the AMAC News app, go ahead and do that now. You can watch, you can listen to this show right on your smartphone. You can track breaking news right from our AMAC News app. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow, like, and share wherever you are on social media. Thank you all for joining us today. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here and have a great day, everyone.
You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.